Emma Delaney was a rising tech prodigy known as the Google Girl until one morning jog ended in a brutal murder that shocked Silicon Valley. Nathan Bexley was a disgraced programmer with a grudge, and Bryce Harper was a powerful executive with everything to lose. What began as corporate sabotage quickly spiraled into a calculated killing, and the deeper investigators dug, the darker the truth became. She was still in her running gear, lightweight blue jacket, smartwatch, wireless earbuds, and neon shoes, but her head was bloodied, her skull fractured, and her legs bore deep scrapes from an apparent fall or violent drag. Paramedics confirmed she had been dead for hours. The coroner's initial report pointed to blunt force trauma as the cause of death. Her apartment in Palo Alto was minimalistic and neat, reflecting the personality of someone who thrived on order and focus. Her walls were mostly bare except for a single-frame photo of her family and a vision board filled with project ideas and motivational quotes. Emma alleged that Bryce had overridden her administrative access, copied segments of her proprietary code, and attempted to pass it off as his own for a separate Google initiative. He described her as bright but paranoid and said she'd been increasingly withdrawn in recent months. She ran the same route every Saturday, at the same time, and often posted her run summaries to Strava and Instagram. Strava, the app she used to log her runs, was the most telling. The account, under the anonymous name Codebreaker321, had no public workouts posted but had liked and bookmarked nearly every one of Emma's runs. It raised immediate suspicion. The account had been created just 6 weeks earlier and used a generic profile image. Detectives subpoenaed Strava for IP data, which initially traced back to a VPN service, making identification difficult. But during one login session, the user had failed to activate the VPN. That exposed a single real IP address, which was linked to a shared workspace in downtown San Jose. Emma had made her profile public, likely out of habit rather than awareness of its risks. Through it, anyone could view her past running routes, average pace, start times, and even live location if she enabled beacon mode. While that may have seemed harmless to most runners, it provided a digital roadmap of her routine to anyone paying attention. Police suspected someone may have been watching her movements long before the day of the murder. It wasn't random, it was precise. Someone had studied her, and now they had acted. Without evidence of a direct threat, detectives had little choice but to let him go. Still, his name remained on the list of key persons of interest. More disturbingly, her emails showed she feared retaliation. She'd written to a close friend days before her death saying, "If something happens, it's not random." Her bedroom held no surprises, just books on programming, leadership, and mental wellness. There was no sign of forced entry, nothing out of place. Her digital devices, however, told a more intriguing story. Investigators believed she had been attacked from behind. Nothing was stolen. One particular folder was password protected and titled "Failsafe." When Google's internal tech security team helped investigators unlock it, they found extensive documentation of an internal project she was working on, codenamed Project Iris. The files included warning notes and code logs suggesting unauthorized modifications had been made, entries Emma hadn't written herself. This led detectives to a formal complaint she filed with Google's HR department just 5 days before her murder. Her phone, earbuds, and smartwatch were all accounted for, untouched. This wasn't a robbery, it was personal. Emma Delaney was a rising star in the tech world, someone whose intelligence seemed to radiate from everything she touched. At just 27, she had already been featured in several online publications for her work in AI development at Google's Mountain View campus. She was known by the nickname Google Girl, not just because of her job, but because of how deeply connected she was to the tech culture of Silicon Valley. Her routines were tight, calculated, and methodical, always arriving at the office before 8 a.m., always logging off after dark, and always going for a jog at sunrise, no matter the season. Her favorite trail was Old Page Mill Road, a secluded path nestled between dry California hills and expensive private properties. On Saturday, May 3rd, Emma set out on her usual route just before 6:15 a.m. She never returned. Later that evening, a local hiker stumbled across her body, hidden beneath a steep embankment off the trail. The story hit national headlines within hours. News anchors, true crime bloggers, and social media influencers all picked up the tragedy of the young, brilliant woman murdered in the heart of Silicon Valley. Emma's family flew in from Boston, shocked and devastated. Her coworkers described her as driven, introverted, and fiercely protective of her work. Police began interviewing friends, colleagues, and neighbors, but the deeper they looked, the more they realized how isolated Emma had become. She had no recent romantic partners, no feuds, no alarming social media activity. She wasn't involved in any online groups or forums that raised red flags. Her digital footprint was so clean, it raised suspicions. It was as if she had been watching her back long before anyone knew she needed to. Detectives began their investigation by delving into Emma's life, hoping to uncover a lead. Emma's work laptop contained advanced code snippets and AI prototypes not yet released to the public. The complaint named her senior manager, Bryce Harper, a well-known executive with years of experience in AI security. Police interviewed Bryce Harper the next morning. Calm and confident, he denied any wrongdoing and claimed Emma had misinterpreted a routine code merge. Meanwhile, Emma's jogging routine began to raise its own red flags. As detectives expanded their focus, they began closely analyzing Emma's presence on fitness apps. Investigators noticed a pattern in her run history. One particular user had consistently interacted with her routes for nearly a month. The account, under the anonymous name Codebreaker321, had no public workouts posted but had liked and bookmarked nearly every one of Emma's runs. It raised immediate suspicion. The account had been created just 6 weeks earlier and used a generic profile image. Detectives subpoenaed Strava for IP data, which initially traced back to a VPN service, making identification difficult. But during one login session, the user had failed to activate the VPN. That exposed a single real IP address, which was linked to a shared workspace in downtown San Jose. Security footage from the building showed a man entering the workspace around the time the login occurred. Facial recognition software identified him as Nathan Bexley, a 33-year-old freelance programmer with a short-lived past at Google. He had been hired on a 3-month contract the year prior but was let go for behavioral issues and failure to meet project deadlines. It showed dozens of searches on Emma's name, including her jogging habits, conference appearances, and public profiles. More chillingly, one of the last saved searches was how to disable Apple Watch emergency alerts. Nathan had planned something. And now the police were closing in. The device recorded her elevated heart rate, GPS location, and most importantly captured audio during the fight. What they found removed all doubt. Inside a locked drawer was a burner phone containing deleted text threads about GPS spoofing and route tracking apps. A second phone had a folder filled with screenshots of Emma's Strava data, as well as surveillance photos of her taken from a distance. A duffel bag in his closet contained gloves, a mask, and a lightweight hammer with faint blood traces still intact. The messages detailed a backchannel plan to extract AI prototypes, rebrand them, and sell them off to an overseas tech firm under the guise of a new startup Bryce was quietly assembling. Emma had become an obstacle. Her refusal to sign off on the altered project logs and her formal complaint to HR had disrupted the plan. She was viewed as a risk and intelligent liability who couldn't be persuaded or intimidated. Forensic tests would later confirm the blood matched Lauren's DNA, but investigators uncovered digital payments made to Nathan's account through cryptocurrency transfers untraceable at first glance, but ultimately linked back to an exchange Bryce had used multiple times. Nathan had stalked Emma for weeks, mapping out her running schedule, learning her patterns, and waiting for the perfect moment. Bryce, while never physically present, had orchestrated the plan from behind a desk, believing his status and clean record would shield him. But they underestimated Emma's caution and the digital breadcrumbs she left behind. Surveillance footage also showed Bryce meeting Nathan at a downtown cafe weeks before Emma's death, their conversation appearing tense and calculated. Bryce was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, and obstruction of justice. Emma's story sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. A brilliant woman was silenced, not because she made a mistake, but because she stood her ground. In the end, her commitment to truth brought her killers down. The timeline was aligning with chilling precision. Investigators isolated the attacker's voice and sent it for forensic voice analysis. The results were damning. These files had been illegally accessed, altered, and copied. It became evident that Emma's murder wasn't just about obsession, it was about silencing her before she could expose a much larger scheme. The tone, cadence, and vocabulary usage matched an archived interview Nathan Bexley had done years earlier for a tech startup vlog. The voice print was nearly a perfect match. Authorities now had both a technological and circumstantial link between Nathan and a second victim. When detectives searched company records, they found that Nathan had worked under the supervision of Bryce Harper. The connection between Emma, Bryce, and Nathan was no longer coincidental. Nathan had the technical expertise, access to her routines, and potential motive revenge, or something more complex. As forensic analysts combed through the contents of the USB drive, they found metadata linking the code to multiple unauthorized logins from devices not registered to Emma. Each login originated from a private IP range used by senior staff within Google's internal network. Among them, one stood out: Bryce Harper's personal laptop. Investigators obtained a warrant for his home and seized several devices. On one of his external hard drives was an encrypted folder that mirrored Emma's Project Iris files, only these were labeled under a different name and altered just enough to appear original. It was a blatant attempt at intellectual theft, but the real motive went deeper than stolen code. When brought in for questioning, Nathan denied knowing Emma personally. On a foggy Sunday morning, just 9 days after Emma's death, a woman named Lauren Hine was assaulted while jogging along the Matadero Creek Trail barely 5 miles from the site where Emma's body had been found. She hadn't seen his face, but she recalled something strange. During the scuffle, the man had shouted under his breath, muttering words like override, cache, and kernel dump. These weren't just random phrases. They were terms that would only make sense to someone with a deep knowledge of computer systems, terms often used in high-level programming. Lauren, a Stanford graduate student, was struck from behind but managed to fight back. Her injuries were severe, but she survived. More importantly, she remembered key details that would become critical to cracking the case. He claimed he had never used Strava, never accessed the workspace terminal, and had no reason to target a Google employee. But his alibi crumbled when forensic experts recovered deleted browser data from a backup drive. Just as investigators were beginning to assemble the pieces around Emma's murder, a second, nearly identical attack shifted the entire direction of the case. Lauren described her attacker as average height, dressed in black with gloves and a balaclava. At the time of the attack, Lauren was wearing a smartwatch similar to Emma's. With new urgency, police obtained a warrant to search Nathan's apartment. But the most alarming discovery was a USB drive hidden beneath a loose floorboard. It contained classified Google source code, including Emma's Project Iris documentation. The arrest of Nathan Bexley was just the beginning. Internal emails retrieved from Bryce's corporate account showed encrypted correspondence with Nathan over the past 6 months. Bryce denied all involvement, claiming the emails were forged and that Nathan acted alone. In court, prosecutors painted a picture of betrayal, greed, and cold-blooded strategy. The jury delivered swift verdicts. Nathan was found guilty of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Bryce was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, and obstruction of justice. Emma's story sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. A brilliant woman was silenced, not because she made a mistake, but because she stood her ground. In the end, her commitment to truth brought her killers down.